I'm Brittany. This is Mo Run, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. Today, we continue reading Volume 8 of Erha. And there are a couple things that we got to get out of the way first. First and foremost, we read for a couple of hours. We usually take a break around halfway through, and we usually get through about 40 to 50 pages. There are no spoilers, please, because there are always new readers, which includes me. I have not read this before, so I will be kind of reacting and commenting as we go. And there are spoilers. There are trigger warnings available down in the description box, should you need to use them. Also down there is an evergreen link to the public version of the Gaywatch Discord, which is where a lot of other queerish, bookish discussions are happening. And I think that might be it, which is a little sickening because that means we just get to start reading. We are on page 181 for chapter 259, which is called At Your Side. And previously on Erha, Mo Run's kind of on trial, kind of again, and he did something, or more to the point, he killed someone, and we don't have the full context for that yet. But it's not looking like great. And from what I understand, we get the full context today, at the very least. And like I said in the book chat stream that just happened, you know, context is a weapon in Meat Bun's hands, and that should concern everyone. It concerns me, and I don't have any lemonade from my good friend Mike for this again. And I feel like one of these days that's really going to bite me in the ass, and I'll have to have Mike for the rest of the volumes. But until then, I just get to be here unprotected by lemonade from friends. So it's been so long. How can you remember? Someone asked. But of course he remembered. In the upper cultivation realm, in Jiangxi's memory, it had been an ordinary 6 months. In the lower cultivation realm, in Shui Jingyong's recollection, it had been a year of sorrow. But for Mo Run, it'd been 35 days of sinking despair. Every morning had felt as long as a year. Every day was torment, and every night was hell. When the new prices were announced, everyone worried for themselves. No one would spare anything for Duan Yuan and her son on the street, so they had no choice but to dig through the trash for rotting vegetables and moldy bread. As more and more people went hungry, even the rotting vegetables grew scarce. Under these circumstances, Mo Run couldn't help asking, "Mom, why don't we go to Rufeng's sect and ask him for food?" But Duan Yihan mumbled, "Anyone but him." Singing on the street side, nodding her head and bending her back, hawking her wares and smiling, all this was work she did to survive. But begging before Nangongyan was different. No matter how dire their straits, Duan Yihan couldn't bring herself to cross that final line. Since she wouldn't bend, Mo Run didn't bring it up again. The little boy was unobtrusive and extraordinarily nimble. On the 9th day after the prices were raised, he managed to steal a white radish out from the dirt. Duan Yihan hid it very carefully. Every day they'd boil a piece the length of a fist and share it. By the 8th meal of radish, the remainder was rotting, but there was still no food to be had. Duan Yihan cut it in half once more, in hopes of stretching it just a few days longer. On the 21st day, they finished the last of the radish. Nothing edible was left. On the 25th day, there was a great storm. Worms crawled out of the mud, and Mo Run caught them and boiled them in a little rainwater to eat. Their sliminess was disgusting. Mo Run apologized over and over to the tiny creatures, explaining that there was really nothing else. Did we have to invoke a similar feeling to Chuaning and the fish? Did we really have to do that? Was that necessary? Was that fair? If he survived this, he promised, he'd honor the worms as his saviors. He prayed to the heavens, begging not to have to eat his saviors anymore, begging for this nightmare to pass. On the 28th day, Moran fell sick with a fever. No child, no matter how quick or clever, or how strong their spiritual energy, could endure such, privation? I don't think I've seen that word before. I have context clues, but Duan Yihan had no more strength left, her eyes two hollow pits. That day, as Mo-Run slept, she made up her mind. She rose and left the woodshed that was their home, turning her steps toward Rufang Sek's lofty towers. She had her line in the sand. She'd rather die than beg Nangongyan for food. But her child had done nothing wrong. He was so little. How could she bear to let him die with her? Compassion shone on the faces of the listening crowd. Regardless of whether Mo-Run had sinned or not, these events of the past were all too tragic. Someone carefully asked, their voice high, "Did she manage to get any food?" "No," said Mo-Run. Unfortunately, Nangongyan was in the middle of a fight with his wife when she got there. He paused. "The madam had a fit the instant she saw my mother. Never mind showing her charity, she ordered her beaten and chased out of Rufang Sect." "What about Nangongyan?" "I don't know," said Mo-Run. "My mom never said." He might have tried to stop them, or he might have stood there helpless. Mo-Run would never know what happened that day, except that his mom returned covered in injuries. She lay curled up in the woodshed, holding him in silence. Later, she began coughing, spitting out bloody foam and filling the room with the sour stench of copper and bile. By the 34th day, Duan Yihan was close to death. She could barely speak, and she stopped crying. On that day, she woke from her stupor, having regained some measure of strength, and saw Mo-Run curled into her side, trying to use his body, all skin and bones, to keep her warm. Ever so softly, she whispered, "Little Ronair, if you can, go back to Shangtan." "Mom, go to Shangtan and find Shunjie. Repay her." Duan Yihan patted Mo-Run's hair. "Go back to Shangtan and repay her. Don't stay in Linyi for revenge. Listen to Mom. Be good. I owe your Shunjie a lot of money. I can't pay it back. Go to her and stay with her. Help her with her work, and be sure to make her smile. When someone does you a kindness, you must remember it." Holding back his tears, Mo-Run looked up into her emaciated face. Duan Yihan's eyes were so dark they seemed to gleam faintly purple. "And pay them back." Such was the path Duan Yihan laid out for Mo-Run before she died. She feared her child would take a dark road after her death. So she gave him 1,000 reminders to do otherwise. She exhorted him over and over again to leave this place of tragedy. Someone with a firm purpose in mind wouldn't overthink. They wouldn't fall into the prison of hatred so easily. So she gave him that purpose. Go and repay her kindness. Do not seek revenge. On the 35th day, that absurd price order was finally abolished in the wake of revolt. It had only lasted a month and 5 days. To the wealthy, it was as if a farce had ended. Smoke was rising from the ruins of Ligny, but they and their silken canopies only stretched lazily as day broke over the city, taking the fragrant dew offered by their handmaidens and rinsing their mouths. At news of the price order being abolished, they groused a bit, then yawned. None of it mattered overmuch. But to Mo Run, this was the best news of his life. Now that they didn't have to worry about filling their own stomachs, kind people reappeared on the streets. Mo Run was given a pancake and a battered bowl of pathetically thin gruel flavored with shreds of meat. Sorry, that line fucked me up. About now that they didn't have to worry about filling their own stomachs, kind people reappeared on the streets. There's a lot to unpack there, actually. Because on one hand, if people are like starving and they can't even really barely feed themselves, then of course there's not enough to go around. But the irony of kind people returned to the streets, even though he didn't necessarily like mean it that way, it's still like, it's just fucking complicated, you know? He couldn't bear to take even a sip of it for himself. Cradling it with utmost care, he rushed back home to his sick mother. Meat porridge is amazing. Surely Mom will get better as soon as she has some? He rushed to save his mom's life with that porridge, but he couldn't run. The bowl had a crack in its side. Wouldn't it be a shame if he spilled any as he ran? He burst into the woodshed with mingled delight and impatience. Mom! Holding the broken bowl in his hands, he nudged open the shoddy door with his head like a particularly grubby dog. A smile spread over his face. His features creased with anticipation for the future. It was such a good day. They had meat porridge. His mom would get better. Spring was finally here. And they'd go back to Shangtan together. It would be peaceful there. They wouldn't go hungry, and there was someone named Shunjija. They'd finally stop wandering and begging for food. What a wonderful thing it would be to go home together. The door creaked open. She was lying there, said Moran, voice steady. Some of the onlookers were shocked at his calmness, others disturbed by his callousness. This man was serene even while describing his own mother's death. There was no warmth, emotion, nor even a glint of tears. No one gave any thought to how many years of haunted nightmares and agonized sorrow it took to smooth those scars into a peaceful mask. I called for her, but she didn't wake. She never would. She never had any of the porridge. Silence settled over the hall. Then, afterward, it was Madame Wang, her voice quavering. You returned to Shangtan alone? Moran shook his head. I went to Rufeng sect. Someone exclaimed, Did you want to get revenge? My mom told me to repay kindness, not to take revenge. Moran was still unnervingly calm. I didn't go for revenge. I just wanted to bury my mom properly, but I had no money, nor any time to raise it. I went to his manor to beg for some coin for a coffin. Did he give you any? Moran almost smiled. No. No. But you said Nengongyan still felt something for your mom. Couldn't he at least spare something for the funeral? When I arrived, his wife had died by her own hand not long ago. What? Jiangshi narrowed his eyes. Nangong Yan's wife did die young, and it was a suicide. When that woman was pregnant, her husband was out getting bastards on other women. After she had their son, she and her husband fought constantly. Her life was a deeply unhappy one. When she caught my mom begging for food at the manor, she was furious. I heard she stabbed Nangong Yan with a knife, and he threatened to divorce her. Like a whole rat's nest of shit going on in that house. Marun paused. She couldn't bear it. In the dead of night, she hung herself. Actually, she died just a few days before my mother did. No one knew what to say. I mean, what the fuck do you say? It's one of those situations where if you say anything, you're kind of an asshole. A dissolute young master's careless dalliance had left one woman in ruins and his own family destroyed. Perhaps it was karmic retribution. In that case, karma really is a bitch. Because he did that. And, like, everybody else paid for it? I showed up just as the sect leader was berating Nangong Yan. His wife's family was there too, all powerful merchants in Linyi. They'd already given Nangong Yan the sharp end of their tongue up and down, and all he felt was resentment. Of course he wasn't happy to see me. Madame Wang had the softest heart of any in the room. Though she knew Mo-Run wasn't kin, she still wept and murmured, "Ronair." These were not memories he wished to relive. The sight of Nangong Yan's face, the faces of all those there to pay their respects in Madame Nangong's memorial hall. That woman had everything. Gilt paper, silver flowers, paper dolls, and piles of spiritual tools, brocade soul flags, and a gleaming casket of goldwood. Hundreds wept, kneeling in vigil for a woman who'd taken her own life. The ever-bright lamps were filled with scented whale oil, and those 99 coils of incense burned in silence, scattering fragrant ash at the soft touch of the breeze. It was a busy scene of mourning. But what of his own mother? Duan Yihan, the music goddess of Shangtan, only had rags unfit to wear and a son who was skin and bones. She lacked even a straw mat to wrap her body in. Beggars can't be choosers. These were the words Nangong Yan hurled at Mo-Run in his fury and his despair. Before the watching eyes of his sect leader and in-laws, he shoved his bastard son out of the door and out of his life. Danmei authors really know how to make you angry. Of course, Madame Nangong's funeral had a lacquered coffin, agates and fragrance pearls. There was frostcloth to preserve her body, silk to hide her face, and brocade to cover her eyes as she embarked on her final journey. Duan Yihan's death was marked by just one corpse and one mourner. It was an eternal farewell and nothing more. According to Nangong Yan, she didn't even deserve a casket of cheap board. Who dared to say all were equal in the face of death? They were unequal from the very beginning. In the end, one was borne up like pristine jade, while the other sank into putrid mud. That would be on page 187. When she fucking put income inequality and class warfare on fucking blast. Ooh. They were unequal from the very beginning. That is one of the rawest fucking points she's made in the Raw Point series. I dragged her to the burial mounds and buried her there. Mo-Run kept this part of the story brief, his voice carefully level. He didn't mention how he'd begged passers-by to help him or how he'd spent 2 weeks carrying that rotting corpse to the city outskirts. Nor did he describe how he dug through gravel and stone with his bare hands to cover his mother's wasted form. Mo-Run wasn't used to giving voice to his suffering. He'd always been someone who buried his past deep inside. He never brought it up of his own will. In the first decade and more of his life, he'd experienced all there was of humiliation, malice, scorn, and slander. His heart was hard as iron. He cared nothing for what others thought of him, and wanted their compassion not at all. And then I went to Shangtan. After burying his mother, he couldn't bear to remain in Linyi. He hid in a basket stowed in the back of a Taoist's cart and snuck out of the city, planning to do as his mother bade him and go to Shangtan. It took him 6 months, from high summer to the beginning of winter. When his shoes fell apart, he went barefoot. Thick calluses covered the soles of his feet. He walked on, asking and asking for directions. Just outside Wubei Temple, hunger and cold finally defeated him. He collapsed into a heap of dried grass. "Mom?" The little boy lay curled on the ground, eyes dull beneath scraggly hair. He looked up at the sky. It was snowing. The first snow of winter. "I'm coming to see you. I'm sorry. I can't do it anymore." Snowflakes fell, whisper light, covering his eyes. There came the sound of rustling footsteps, followed by a pair of hands reaching into the grass. He heard a boy's voice ring out. "Shizun, come take a look. What's wrong with him?" After a moment, the rustle of straw sandals drew closer. A man said, "Don't worry, let me take a look at him. You go back first." This deeper voice was calm and indifferent. Instinct made Mo-Run afraid. He liked the youth better. The man seemed cold as ice. He shouldn't have had the strength to do it, but his desire to live drove him to lift his hand and grab weakly at the young man's hem. Tears streamed down his little face before he could form the word, "Food? I'm so hungry, please. I want some food." The youth was precisely the young Chu Wanning who'd come down from the mountain with Huizui. Chu Wanning froze. "What?" Mo-Run struggled to lift his filthy face, hands shaking as he mimed eating. Bitterness stung his throat, and darkness blotted his sight. His ears were ringing. Weeping, he begged the youth in front of him for mercy. If this Xiaogaga abandoned him, like so many lords and young masters had before, he'd die. He would die for sure. He finally fell apart. Hungry. Chu Wanning fed him a flask of congee, and that congee saved a starving boy. Mo-Run left Wubei Temple nearly delirious. All he remembered of his savior Gaga was that he had sharp phoenix eyes, swept up at the ends, and that his lashes were very long and thick. Nothing else. But every day on the trek from Wubei Temple to Shangtan, he wore the cloak his savior Gaga had given him. He had been very small back then. A young man's cloak on his tiny body was conspicuously oversized. When he pulled up the hood, it more or less covered his whole face. Along the road, well-fed children snuggled against their parents would see him and laugh. "Mom, Dad, look at that little beggar boy. What the heck is he wearing?" But Mo-Run wasn't angry. What was a stranger's mockery? I am impressively holding it together, and yet still summarily fucked up. the point of not being able to deliver a line every now and then. What was a stranger's mockery to him? He was merely thankful this ill-fitting cloak could shield him from the wind and rain, that it could give him some small share of warmth. Snowflakes wouldn't land on him when it snowed, and in the dark the shadows wouldn't touch his heart. Fuck you. Fuck you. Just fuck you. Just fuck you for this whole thing, this entire chapter. This is the whole chapter. Just fuck you. Just fuck you. This stream is going to get demonetized, but I don't care. Fuck you. Every day at nightfall, he lit a fire and sat beside it, his arms tight around his knees. He put up his hood, tucking his entire body within the cloak and staring into the orange flames from beneath its fur trim. The cloak was warm like his mom's embrace, or his savior Gaga's gentle phoenix eyes. The little boy fell asleep like this, and in his dreams he breathed in the light fragrance that lingered on the cloak, and felt as if he was leaning against the trunk of a high-tongue tree in full bloom. Well, he's not wrong. There's art on the next page, and I really... Oh, fuck off. No goddamn comment. She has no respect. None. For anyone's feelings. In hindsight, of course he found Chu Wanling's scent delicious. Of course he'd always sleep peacefully if he smelled it on his pillows. Of course he'd found those lowered phoenix eyes gentle when he first saw the Yuheng elder beneath the heaven-piercing tower. No wonder he felt as if he'd seen them before. Perhaps everything was predestined. He and Chu Wanling had spoken long ago, had touched long ago. He'd even licked Chu Wanling's palm. It turned out he'd smelled the floral scent of Chu Wanling's clothes long ago. Yeah, his clothes. It turned out that Savior Gaga he'd always sought was right by his side, never leaving in life or in death. Mo Run looked down at the floor. In that freezing loyalty hall, he felt a small curl of warmth. But that was a secret between the two of them. Mo Run allowed himself to dwell on it for a moment, lingering on its bittersweet ache. Then he hid that secret in his heart. He wouldn't tell another soul, let alone the staring crowd. He took a breath. Once I arrived in Shangtan, I fulfilled my mom's dying wish and sought out Shunfeng Ro. 5-year-old Renair had stood there, wrapped in the thick cloak that once belonged to Chu Wanling. Its filthy hem dragged on the ground. The little boy's dark hair looked like a bird's nest poking out from beneath the fur trim, his thin and sallow face upturned. "May I ask?" he said quietly. "Is Shunfeng Ro Zhizhe here?" "Shunfeng Ro?" The girl he'd asked burst out laughing. "Our star? We ply our talents here, not our bodies, but which of Miss Shun's admirers are here for her singing and not her face? Shaudity, how old are you? How do you know her name?" Mo Run blinked, expression earnest. He hadn't understood a word of her chatter, but it was obvious she was making fun of him. Embarrassed, Mo Run clutched the edges of his cloak and flushed. "Please? I want to find Shunjie. My mom told me to..." "Huh? Who's your mom?" "Her surname's Duan? Duan Yihan." The girl paled, taking a step back and covering her mouth with a handkerchief. Those languid peach blossom eyes had rounded in shock. "You're the goddess's son?" Even at the height of Duan Yuan's fame, she'd never put on airs and always shared extra coin and jewelry with aging sisters whose looks and voices had faded. The second the girl heard this little boy was Miss Duan's son, her attitude changed completely. She hustled him into the inner room to see Xun Fengro. The instant the door closed behind his guide, Mo Run knelt before Xun Fengro and told her everything. Xun Fengro's tears soaked her silks. She summoned the madam at once and said she'd keep Mo Run by her side. The madam was loath to do it, but she couldn't refuse her star performer's repeated entreaties. After looking Mo Run up and down and deciding he was strong enough to work, she agreed with great reluctance. But a beggar moving in was thought to be bad luck. He was required to burn all his clothes and scrub every inch of his skin. The bath was no problem, but Mo Run burst into tears when she said they'd burn his clothes. "What are you crying for? It's not like we won't buy you new ones." The madam smacked him in the head with her pipe. "Smarten up! I'm giving you room and board. Anyone else would be celebrating, but look at you whining instead." Mo Run didn't want to make any trouble for Xunjie. She'd already done all she could. He bit his lip and willed himself to silence, rubbing his scarlet eyes and standing beside the fire as his shoulders shook with soundless sobs. She knows that I'm a fan of well-placed alliteration. Shoulders shook with soundless sobs. Back then, he didn't understand why things had to be this way. Boy, hold on to that feeling. I am a whole-ass adult, and I don't understand why things have to be this way. He'd only wanted to keep his cloak, but because he was weak, because he was lowly, because he was a filthy beggar, because he didn't want to bring bad luck or cause trouble, he had to let them yank it off his shoulders. Why couldn't he fight back? Why couldn't he say no? Why did he not even have the right to cry? The cloak had been his source of warmth and safety. It'd been his shelter in so many storms. It was so dirty no one could tell what its original color had been. Now that he had somewhere to stay, he might not need it anymore. But even if he couldn't wear it again, he wanted to wash it clean and fold it neatly. He would be satisfied with simply storing it at the bottom of a chest. It was his friend, not some old rag. But he wasn't given a choice. A core soul need to take care of anything even related to Chuaning and treat it kindly and gently. Given a choice. Flower planted in heart, exacerbating hatred, not given a choice. Yeah, okay. Uh-huh. I have apparently progressed past the human need for emotion. I'm so far on the other side that I've looped back around again to Stoicism, which is very out of character for me. That filthy cloak met the flames with a crackle. The servant doing the burning didn't care. He only thought the cloak dirty. But to Mo Run, it was a cremation, a burial. He watched unblinking as the flames licked into the air and blurred the edges of the world with their heat. Slow down. There's more. Where did you come from? That young man's gentle voice seemed to echo in his ears, one of the pitifully few times someone ever showed him kindness in his lowly life. Now, it was Ash. I realize that one man's trash is another man's treasure is a platitude, but the annoying thing about platitudes is that they're right. And this would be perhaps the most visceral example of that. And how no one should feel the right to just usurp someone else's perception of value. Like, they care about the thing that makes it valuable. Your lack of care has no effect on that, doesn't magically make it worthless. And that applies to pretty much anything, actually. Anything that can be cared about. Mo Run took the madam of the House of Drunken Jade for his adopted mother and received her surname, Mo. From then on, he worked in that house and finally enjoyed some peaceful days. But the peace didn't last. Xun Fengruo was no longer young, and although the entertainment house wasn't billed as a brothel, women above a certain age were still required to earn enough to pay a dignity fee. If they came up short, their first night might be auctioned off by the madam. A dignity fee. Don't think I've ever come across that term before. Xun Fengruo wasn't worried. I don't think the timeline matches up, but I don't like the implications. Xun Fengruo wasn't worried. She'd already earned lavish sums for the House of Drunken Jade, except it makes too much sense. Implications? Implications. Just, I don't know. Something happened to a virgin, and Morun killed the person who did it. So only 150,000 gold left, she said to Morun with a smile. Little Renair, once your Zhizhe earns enough, I'll be able to buy my freedom. Zhizhe will take you somewhere nice. He's always being promised that he's going to get taken somewhere better. What is that? What is that? He's always... This is the second time... I'm all right. Morun had been sent to work in the kitchen and saw her very rarely. The madam was intent on keeping her workers from commiserating, so Xun Fengruo and Morun always met covertly. Yeah, when you have to keep your workers from commiserating, that's not a sign that you're like a good boss. Morun had... She reached out and pinched his cheek, then handed him a sweet. Take this. Too bad I can't give you any money. Mother's too sharp with that. Morun gave her a gap-toothed grin. Thank you, Shinjija. But the madam knew just as well as Xun Fengruo did that her star was a mere 150,000 gold away from freedom. Though she looked unconcerned, deep down she was terrified. If they lost Xun Fengruo, the House of Drunken Jade's profits would plummet. She was determined to get one last payout before Xun Fengruo left her. There was no shortage of wealthy clients who wanted Xun Fengruo. Any of their bids would be enough to keep the madam in luxury for the rest of her life. Thus the woman hatched a plan. She made an agreement with one of the richest merchants in the city. During the Lantern Festival, when Xun Fengruo was playing music in the hall, the madam served her a cup of drugged tea and brought her to her room. I haven't been this angry at a madam-type figure since the fuck was that show? Nirvana and Fire. I'm getting dragged back to a certain amount of fury in Nirvana and Fire. That night, Mo Run had carefully prepared a bowl of tangyuan, which he carried to the inner room for Shunjie. The sound of coarse panting stopped him at the threshold. Stunned, Mo Run pushed open the door and was hit in the face with the smell of resin incense, so thick it turned his stomach. In the darkness, he saw a greasy merchant with spit dangling from his mouth and his lapels hanging open, gasping atop a weakly struggling Shun Feng-ro. The bowl of tangyuan crashed to the ground as Mo Run darted inside. With preternatural strength, he'd always been powerful. He knocked the merchant off her. Keeping the man pinned, he yelled at the stunned and sobbing Shun Feng-ro, "Jijia, run! But run! I can't go. I have to keep him down. If you stay, we're both doomed and when the madam comes. Run, run, don't worry. I'll be right behind you." Shun Feng-ro was his savior. Mo Run wanted her to flee Shangtan and never come back. That day, he finally got to play the hero. So wrong, but still right somehow. Shun Feng-ro made him a final tearful bow and ran, but Mo Run was not so lucky. The madam came upstairs as soon as she heard the clamor, whereupon she found that Mo Run had not only beat up an important client, but also let their star performer escape. She nearly spat blood in anger, her features twisting in a mask of rage. The madam had a son about Mo Run's own age, a boy who was malicious in nature. Seeing his mother furious, he came up with an idea both naive and cruel, in the way only children could be. Because Mo Run had angered his mother, the boy punished a fellow child like an animal. He found a dog kennel and ordered someone to lock Mo Run inside. The kennel was narrow and cramped. Mo Run could only crouch, unable to either lie down or stand up. They fed him table scraps like a dog, and left him like that for 7 days. That is actual torture. Like, that is a torturous method that is used to torture. Like, that is actual torture. For 7 days, Mo Run was trapped in Shun Feng-ro's old room. The haze of the incense and the stink of the man's sweat mingled in his nose, inescapable. He crouched, stooped over, breathing in that syrupy miasma, wanting to puke for 7 whole days. After this incident, he developed an aversion to the scent of incense, a fear etched into his very bones. That's the end of the chapter. I'm reminded of the beginning of this series. You know how by page 50, there was that case of like truly fucking horrifying child abuse that was kind of like rent lowering gunshots? It was like, you're in for some shit. You should know that. So if you can't handle this, you should probably get out now. That, she did that again with tangerines. And that whole context with that girl that was so fucking infuriating. I was on fuego the whole goddamn time. I wanted to chew the book in half. I was furious. And yet another reason why she put that there, besides all the narrative ones, was to be like, hey, I can make you really fucking angry when I want to. And that was what? Volume 1 or 2? And there's 11 of these motherfuckers. So if you can't handle this, you should probably get out now. So, since we're coming up on 4 anyway, and I need to unclench my shoulders lest I break my spine, we're going to go ahead and take our break now. When we come back, we'll be on page 197 for chapter 260, which is called The Furnace of Life. Whatever the fuck that means at this point. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Please hang out in the Gaywatch break room, or really on the Gaywatch train, and we'll get to the second half when I come back. Welcome back. Sorry, the full messaging behind the earthworms and the I will rescue my saviors thing just landed. Thanks, chat. What a great thing to sit back down to. I was unclenched. We're on page 197 for chapter 260, which is called The Furnace of Life, which could only mean great, wonderful, soft, lovely things. Okay. None of the cultivators in Loyalty Hall knew what to say. Many had lowered their heads, incapable of speech. Ah, bitter fate, said Master Xuanjing. So much bitter fate. Every bitterness has its source. Every grievance has its cause. Much of the world is linked through action and consequence, harm and retribution, said Mu Yanli. Here she changed her tone. But Mo-Run, you must know that suffering does not justify venting your resentment on others. Up to a certain psychological point, sure. But, and this might be just me, we passed that point a while ago. Of course not. An elder of Huohong Pavilion sighed. Mo Shanjin, the trials you went through are certainly worthy of pity, but they were the result of your poor birth and unfortunate fate. Everyone has their own path to walk. You cannot terrorize other people simply because you yourself were terrorized. You've done good and suffered harm, but based on what we know, you also killed. All things must be accounted for. Are we breathing deeply? We should be breathing deeply. Every now and then, you gotta remember to breathe deeply. This time, it was not Mo-Run, but Jiang Shi who responded, How so? Who can account for it all? Whose lives are considered worthy of praise and whose should be condemned? Who can be that fairest arbiter? Jiang Shi was strong and willful. He'd never considered those of Tianyan Pavilion to be gods. I don't intend to be partial toward Mo-Run, but I want to ask a question. We stand here today declaring we want to settle things with Mo-Run, that we want to make him pay. Then what about what Mo-Run has suffered? What about the injustice he's been made to bear? No one had imagined that Jiang Shi, who had endured the heaviest losses during the slaughter at Guiyue, would be the one to speak upon Mo Weiyu's behalf. They looked at him, wide-eyed. Jiang Junmen, Tianyan Pavilion has always been fair, said Mu Yanli. My tribe has guarded the divine scales of justice for generations. When the time comes, we will use the scales to measure his sins and virtues before ascertaining his punishment. You needn't worry. Ah, lawful good. Character alignment. I see. What does he have to do with me? Why would I be worried? Jiang Shi replied. Tianyan Pavilion irritated him to no end. His sect upheld the power of medicine. They believed any mortal man could live forever as long as an elixir was refined with enough sophistication. Guiyue had never held any superstitions regarding these descendants of gods. But I am curious. He narrowed his almond eyes, voice cold. Once you've finished Mo-Run's trial, shouldn't Tianyan Pavilion look for the others involved? Shouldn't you scour the earth and check whether Nangong Yan is still among the living? Shouldn't you go off to Shangtun in search of that merchant who debased Miss Shun? If it's right for Mo Run to pay for murder with his life, then what about the time he was locked in a cage, beaten, or forced into penniless famine, his savior disgraced, and his mother starved to death? Who will you be punishing for these crimes? Jing Junmen, mumbled Master Xuanjing. Why do you speak for a criminal? I was just talking about something so similar in the book chat today. Wasn't I? Why do you speak for a criminal? Do you see where I'm going with it? Somebody who was in the book chat, back me up. I don't, said Jiangshi. His thin lips curled in a sneer. I simply recall how we treated Nangong Se and Yo Wangxi at Mount Huang. I do not wish to see such a scene reenacted. This is completely different, someone protested. How so? Retorted Jiangshi. Yes, the situation has changed. Nangong Se is dead and Yo Wangxi lies bedridden at Guyue even now. But did we not force their hands in the same way, telling them that the sins of Rufeng sect must be repaid with their lives? He turned toward the speaker, brown eyes sharp as a hawk's. Where was Tianyin Pavilion then? Where was justice? Those of Baton Manor were still furious at Rufeng sect over the matter of the sword manual. Li Wuxin's disciple, Jen Songming, cut in. Zheng Jinmen is biased. Nangong Se was the heir to Rufeng sect, and every grievance has its source. Unless all of Rufeng sect is gone, those debts must be paid. No one wants to be the one getting the short end of the stick. Jiangshi scoffed. That's right. You understand this perfectly, don't you? No one wants to be the victim who can't fight back. Zhen Songming fell silent. You think this way, Xu Shuanglin thought this way, and Mo Run is allowed to think the same. Jiangshi swept his sleeves back. When it happens to others, it's easy to say these things. But when you're the victim of injustice and violence, you see only the cruelties of the world and wonder why you're the one to suffer. So Zheng Jinmen believes we were unfair and cruel to Nangong Se and Yu Wangxi, and that the matter of the baton sword manual should be forgotten. Nangong Se is dead, Jiangshi said. Whom are you hoping to pursue? I'm just pinning a relevant comment right now. Zhen Songming exploded. Then my Shizun died for nothing. Nangong Se is dead, but doesn't Yu Wangxi still live? She was the leader of Rufeng Sect's Shadow City. Does she know nothing about the sword manual? Did I fucking skip something? No. Okay. Everyone fell silent. Jiangshi was notorious for his irascible temper. To openly fight with Jiangshi, indeed, the very smart, Zhen Songming did not live up to his name in the least. Jiangshi gave him a look that spoke volumes. On Mount Jiao, Nangong Se was grievously injured when he fought Nangong Changying. He paused. Back then, he conveyed a message to me through the barrier. What did he say? Jiangshi closed his eyes, the scene rising before him once more. Nangong Se, near death beneath Nangong Changying's sword, mouthing each word for Jiangshi to read from his lips through the barrier. I wish for all the wealth of Rufeng sect to be spread across the lands, leaving nothing behind. See, Nangong-se she was gonna bitch slap us, but Nangong-se, we all knew it. The crowd looked at each other in embarrassment, the monks of Wubei Temple even more so. They lowered their eyes, hands clasped as their mouths moved in silent chanting. Zhen Songming colored. He didn't even leave a corpse behind. All the treasures of Rufang's sector and their secret chamber, he gritted out. Who can open it? Let's be honest, he didn't mean it. Nangong-se didn't think he would die in such a way, replied Jiangshi. Also, I'd prefer to believe that his dying words were sincere. Ooh. Oh. Oh wow. No. I'm dizzy with how much of a fan I've become of this man in such a short period of time. Where even am I? Oh, holy shit. Zhen Songming's mouth wobbled. It took him a moment to retort, "This is why Zhang Zhenmen is taking Mo Weiyu's side. You want lenience so you don't have to see a second Nangong-se? I merely think that true justice is difficult, perhaps impossible, to achieve. I hope that those of you passing judgment on others don't put yourself on too high a pedestal. Do not assume that you represent all that is good or righteous." He cast a glance at Tianyin Pavilion. Even the highest court is not infallible. At last, Shui Zhengyang lifted his head. He looked exhausted, as if he didn't know how to face Mo Run. But although he hesitated, he still spoke. "Zhang Zhenmen is right," he rasped. "There have been many conflicts over these years of trouble in the cultivation realm. Every sect has done things they're not proud of. Who can decide what's truly fair? To be honest," he sighed, closing his eyes. "To be honest, do we limit murder to killings done by one's own hand? How many innocents were killed by Rufang Sect's decision to raise the price of food? I've lived more than 40 years and achieved little of note. But what I did wasn't in pursuit of ascending to immortality or leaving my name in history. I just hoped to lessen some of the suffering in the world." His eyes dulled. The leader of Xishang Peak, no matter how he tried to stay composed, was still stunned by the revelation that the child he'd raised was not his kin. "I just wanted there to be less suffering," he murmured. "Even for just one person." Shui Daddy. Oh no. Oh no. Oh dear. I'm in trouble. On a scale from 1 to forgetting how to drink, how gone are you typically for hot, moral, idealistic, kind, and generous father characters? Where the fuck? I don't know. Where he got me, okay? We all know. We were there. We saw the spill, okay? Shui Zhengmen is magnanimous, Mu Yunli said, her tone once again icy. But have you not considered how your leniency toward a criminal is an act of disrespect to the innocent civilians he harmed and an offense to those mortals who had no part in his crimes? Tianyin Pavilion does not have the power to account for every wrong under the sun, to punish everyone by law, but we can make an example of him. Sect leader, please be aware of this. As the matter of Mo Run was handed over to our pavilion, It will not be hastily addressed. Shui Jingyong fell silent. Mu Yunli turned back to Mo Run. Mo Gongzhe, you've finished your tale of woe and received your share of pity. Why don't we now move on to a different subject? I officially don't fucking like her. Been giving her a doubt and giving her the benefit of the doubt and allowing her some grace. Not anymore. What does the pavilion master wish to discuss? Asked Mo Run indifferently. You say the incident where the tofu seller's daughter was disgraced and died was not your doing. I believe you. But there is another death you cannot be excused from. Mo Run closed his eyes. The pavilion master is certainly thorough. Let's hear it, Mu Yunli replied coolly. How did you kill Mo Nian, Shui Zhenju's real nephew? Enough! A furious shout cut her off. Shui Meng stood with gritted teeth, eyes shining with tears and hatred. Shut up! Mu Yunli shot him a glance. Attempting to avoid the subject, she pronounced. Disappointing to see from the darling of the heavens. She was answered by Long Cheng's shrill cry of warning. The scimitar flew by her face and into the column behind her, sending splinters raining down. Mu Yunli didn't flinch or even blink. Her beautiful eyes pinned their frozen stare upon Shui Meng. Shui Meng clenched his jaw, muscles twitching in his face. Real nephew this, fake nephew that. Have you had enough? He strode forward and yanked Long Cheng out of the column, his chest heaving. He didn't look at Mo Run or anyone else. He resembled nothing as much as a trapped beast, driven insane where he stood, driven to despair. Have you said enough? Have you had a good time? Had your fill? Meng, Madame Wang sighed. Shui Meng ignored her. He looked around with scarlet-rimmed eyes, gripping Long Cheng's hilt. Seeing a Zongsha become a murderer, he said mockingly, both himself and the audience objects of his scorn. Watching the brothers of Xisheng Peak turn on each other, watching as members of a family become enemies. You're enjoying yourselves, aren't you? His voice was so hoarse it whistled in his throat, each syllable shivering into the air. Did you really come here for justice, for truth? He paused, teeth clenched. Or was it for your own personal petty vendettas? Jiang Shi narrowed his eyes. Young Master Shui, you forget yourself. Shui Meng whirled on him with eyes like flames. What gives you the right to rebuke me? Meng Er. Shui Jingyong reached out to pull Shui Meng back, but froze upon touching him. Shui Meng was furious, but his entire body was trembling fit to shatter. I don't want to hear it, he bit the words out. It's all fake, all wrong, you're all liars. Before Shui Jingyong could try to speak to him, Shui Meng had already shoved his way through the crowd and out of Loyalty Hall. Throughout it all, he never once turned to look at Mo Run. In fact, Shui Meng knew perfectly well what the truth was, and who the liar was. But there were many things in the world that were easily known, yet impossible to accept. Shui Meng had lived 2 decades in carefree ease. He'd never experienced any devastation besides Chu Wanling's death. His easy life meant he was still, in many ways, like a child. Yet this was only to his detriment. One like a child would have a child's pure heart, but would also have a child's naivete, recklessness, and brash temper. Shui Jingyong stared in the direction Shui Meng had gone for a long moment before slowly sitting back down. The time of his youth was long past. He was nearly 50. and white had begun to feather his temples. He didn't know if he could endure what was to happen. He had to sit down. This, at least, would allow him some small measure of composure. Mu Yanli's face seemed sheened in frost, devoid of any warmth. She cared about the matter at hand and nothing else. Mo Yu, will you speak, or should I find another witness? Mo Run was as calm as any prisoner on death row. No need, he said. If there are any witnesses still alive, I don't wish to see them. He slowly looked up. Weak sunlight streamed down upon his pallid face. I'll tell you myself. At a gesture from Mu Yunli, Tianyin Pavilion's servants brought a chair. She sat down with a flourish, resting her chin on one hand in preparation to attend to his tale. Proceed. Mo Run closed his eyes and drew in a breath before beginning. We're really having to roll our shoulders. Here's a good reminder to breathe. Breathe. We're breathing. We're inhaling. We're exhaling. Okay? All right. It started with a businessman. Who? He hesitated. I'm sure many of you have heard of the investigators' market. Ma Yun of Taobao Estate knew this business best. He raised a hand. Oh yes, our sect works closely with these investigators. They roam the cities, making their living investigating old stories and events of the past. That's right. Back when Uncle was looking for his brother's orphan, he engaged just such an investigator. Shui Jingyong said nothing. Of course he remembered this. They'd found Mo Run using the information provided by the investigator, who'd told them only one boy survived when the House of Drunken Jade went up in flames. He still remembered the look on the man's face as he exclaimed, "What God-given luck! That your brother's son survived such a calamity must mean prosperity lies in his future." The investigator accepted Uncle's commission. After a few failed attempts, he found a lead and went to the House of Drunken Jade in search of a woman surnamed Mo. Who? Someone asked. Shui Jungman's brother's lover, known as Madame Mo. She was the base-born daughter of a large family. Realization broke over the assembly. Madame Mo? Wasn't that the name of the brothel, madam? But she sounded like a vicious shrew. She wasn't always so, said Mo Run peaceably. My mom said Madame Mo had gone through an experience similar to hers, and that she too was to be pitied. She'd had a lover when she was young, a penniless wandering cultivator. He said he was going to the lower cultivation realm to establish a powerful sect, so Madame Mo gave him all her coin and jewelry so he could realize his dream. It was my daga, mumbled Shui Jingyong. Before this cultivator left, he swore Madame Mo an oath. Once he accomplished his goals, he said, he'd marry her with all pomp and circumstance and bring her home. He even wrote her a line of verse. Through the river mists do the peeping notes float. He listens in silence to the goddess on her boat. That was how the investigator later made certain of her identity. Star-crossed love stories like these were by far the most popular fate. A female cultivator sighed. Did the former sect leader of Xisheng Peak abandon his lover just like Nangongyan? Shui Jingyong's eyes widened. Nonsense, he cried. My Gaga was nothing like that. My Gaga never forgot Miss Mo. Tears sprang to his eyes at the mention of his deceased brother. Also, the fact that she chose just the star-crossed love stories like these were by far the most popular fate. A female cultivator sighed. Oh, did she live What was that accusation earlier about everyone being here for the tea? Basically, treating this like fun story, fiction, you know? Write a book. Jesus. The Xuanji elder took up the explanation. Miss, please mind what you say. The former sect leader lost his life in a terrible battle not long after the sect was founded. He never intended to go back on his word. Before he passed, he spoke often of Miss Mo to the sect leader. He always said he'd seek her out as soon as the sect had stabilized. He and Nangongyan were nothing alike. Indeed, sighed Moran. She was much luckier than my mother. Her lover passed, but there was still someone thinking of her and wanting to bring her home. Whereas Nangongyan was still alive, but he never had the courage to acknowledge my mom and me. I see now, another voice cried. This made you jealous, so you pulled the prince and pauper conceit, killing Madame Mo and burning down the house of Drunken Jade so you could pass yourself off as the real goods. At this uncharitable conjecture, Moran shot the genius cultivator who'd spoken a glance. I never attempted to pass myself off as anything. Unfazed, the cultivator scoffed. Then what was it? Did someone force you to become young master of Xisheng Peak? Dear God, is the ancient Twitter. What was it? Moran found himself wondering the same. So much of this world had once been something entirely different, until a butterfly flapped its wings and stirred a breeze that became a whirlwind, which changed the skies themselves. Just as he'd never intended to take Shui Jingyong's nephew's place, Madame Mo hadn't always been that cruel mistress of the entertainment house. She, too, had had days of gentle youth. She, too, had once stood at the window hoping for her lover to return. She'd joyfully written to her distant love about the child growing in her belly and received his letters in reply, the excitement and delight of a soon-to-be father inked clear across the pages. She'd had all of that happiness once. Can't even fucking hate her. Wild how so much of what we talked about in the book chat today is coming up. Whew. I mean, we can hate her, but we can't, you know what I mean? It's the three-dimensional approach to people who do evil things. It didn't matter that she was base-born. It didn't matter that people mocked her because her man was a nameless cultivator. It didn't matter that she was pregnant out of wedlock. Someday he would make good on his promise and come in glory to bring them home. She believed this faithfully. But as the days wore on, the letters that had come every 3 days began to come once a week. They dwindled from once a week to once a month, and then there were none at all. Eventually, Madame Mo gave up hope. She was a willful young woman. She'd hidden her relationship from her parents, and after she had the child, she hesitated for ages before bringing the boy home. When she finally worked up the courage, her father flew into a rage, and the mistress of the house heaped abuse upon her. Furious, Madame Mo ran away from home. The years flew by, and the young woman became the madam of the house of Drunken Jade. Such were the ups and downs of fate. Life was like a furnace. Some who entered its tempering flames would emerge entirely unrecognizable. Moran had experienced this firsthand, and so, too, had Madame Mo. Sure. That's... No, fair. No, yeah. Yeah. That's a fair thing to unleash upon a reader. When the investigator found her at last, it had been 14 years since those days of her girlish youth. The man Shui Jingyong had hired helped himself to a seat in the entertainment house. Snapping open his fan, he smiled. "Where's the madam? Call her over." She arrived wearing a jacket patterned with peach blossoms and a shawl of yellow silk. Peeking through the doorway with pipe in hand, she lifted the tinkling bed veil and tittered, "Hello, Gongcha. Here for music so early in the morning. Do you prefer the pipa or the yangqin? My girls are skilled in all manner of instruments. As the first customer of the day, I'll be sure to give you a good price." This was the nature of life. When her lover had left 14 years ago, she'd sat by the bed veil with tears on her lovely cheeks, watching him leave. 14 years later, when her lover's brother finally found her, the veil of time was brushed aside once more. She pushed away the dangling jewels to reveal a face marked by time. That maiden, bashful as a doe, was dead and gone, and the one in the position of command in the House of Drunken Jade was a sly-eyed matron with a long-stemmed pipe in her hand. The investigator didn't care much for sorrow, only money. Fanning himself, he smiled. "No, thank you. I've come to ask the madam about a certain person." The woman's smile stiffened. "A certain person?" she asked, tone cool. "Who?" The man clearly enunciated each syllable of the words he had memorized. "Through the river mists do the pipa notes float. He listens in silence to the goddess on her boat." Before he'd gotten halfway through, Madame Mo had paled. By the time he finished his recitation, she was white as paper. Her lips quivered, her sharp brows twitching as she clutched a handkerchief to her chest. Who are you?" The investigator smiled. "If I'm not mistaken, I finally found would this be Shanzhong? Shui Shanzhong, the right person?" "Madame Mo, how have you been?" Madame Mo swayed and sat heavily on the round stool before the table. She gasped for breath, face flushing, then going bloodless once more. When she recovered, she sent everyone away, leaving only the investigator in the hall. She stared into the man's face, eyes shining with joy, grief, and everything in between. The investigator was unbothered. He lifted the pot of tea and poured her a lukewarm cup, then passed it over. "Have a sip." She picked it up with a trembling hand, taking one sip, then two. Even after finishing the cup, she sipped on nothing before looking up. Did Shui Long send you here?" The man sighed. "Unfortunately, Shui Shenjun, you speak of, has long since passed." "What?" "It was his younger brother who sent me on a search for his lost lover. More than a decade ago, the Shui brothers went to the lower cultivation realm to found a sect. Their fortunes rose, and they were no longer those helpless wandering cultivators anymore. But because Shui Shenjiang was crucial in building up the sect, he couldn't step away. And when he was on an exorcism mission, he didn't need to finish." Madame Mo buried her face in her hands and burst into tears. The investigator consoled her for a long time before she managed to master herself. "Before Shui Shenjun passed, he spoke often to his brother about you. All these years his brother has been looking for you, in hopes of finding you and bringing you home." Madame Mo grasped the investigator's hand, mumbling in disbelief. Say those words again. I refuse. I won't believe he's dead." Those words were the key to this whole enterprise. The investigator spoke them easily. "Through the river mists do the pipa notes float. He listens in silence to the goddess on her boat." Tears swam in Madame Mo's eyes. He didn't come back for me because, and I blamed him." The investigator sighed. "It's been so many years. Madam, please rest easy. By the way, do you happen to have a son?" Yes, I do." Madame Mo wept harder, mopping at her face as she called up the stairs. Anyan, Monyan, hurry, come downstairs." The door opened, but the boy who emerged was not Monyan. It was a scrawny child holding a pile of dirty laundry, poking his gaunt face out from behind the clothes. Cuts and bruises marred his cheek, and his eyes were smudged with exhaustion. The investigator hesitated. "Is this your son?" No. Wiping her face, Madame Mo answered. "This is just one of our kitchen boys." Relieved, the man smiled. "I see." Madame Mo turned. "Moran, where is the young master?" that was the end of the chapter. Just going out on a limb, a wild limb, but this is Erha. Going out on a limb, is it possible that even if Mo Run just straight up killed Mo Nian, is it possible that Madame Mo then handed him over to Shui Jingyang to get money? Is that crazy? I feel like every time I come up with a theory, it sounds just absolutely batshit insane. But have you seen what has happened in this series so far? We're on page 211 for 261, which is called Stain of Crime. We're reading this chapter today, right? We have time. It's only 4:40. Okay. Jesus. Now's yet another reminder to roll your shoulders. Take a deep breath. I told you what chapter 261 is called, right? We're on page 211 for chapter 261. It's called Stain of Crime, in case I just blacked out and didn't say that. At this point, Master Xuanjing of Wubei Temple sighed. Amitabha, so Mo Gongzhe is indeed not Shui Zhengmen's nephew. Bitter fate. Someone in the crowd had connected the dots. Oh, so that was him then. A nearby cultivator didn't understand. Who? The boy who came up with the idea of locking Mo Run in the dog kennel. The boy about Mo Run's age, Madame Mo's son. As if experiencing an epiphany, the man slapped a hand to his forehead and cried, I see now. You killed them and took his place not out of jealousy or greed, but because you held a grudge against him. This logic made sense to many in the crowd, who turned looks of both scorn and pity upon Mo Run. That lines up. Oh, of course, even the despicable have reason to be pitied. Mu Yanli cleared her throat, and the murmuring settled down. Mo Gongzhe, I heard you were starved and abused at the House of Drunken Jade, and that the madam beat and swore at you. Is that true? Yes, Mo Run replied. Then her son was that boy who locked you in a kennel, correct? Yes. The guesses of the crowd were confirmed. The murmurs swelled again as they nodded to themselves. See, of course his motive came out of that grudge. He must have hated them both. They were right. How could Mo Run not hate them? Mo Nian was his own age, but much healthier and stronger. No one dared raise a hand to him because he was the madam's son. The boy had been cruel since he was little, and Mo Run was his favorite punching bag. Whenever he got into trouble, he made sure Mo Run took the fall. Mo Run was framed for all sorts of nasty mischief Mo Nian had caused. But Mo Run was an extremely obedient child. Despite his suffering, he never dared take revenge on young Master Anyan. He was only given one flatbread a day as it was. If he spoke up, that single mouthful of food might be taken away from him. It didn't matter if he was beaten or wronged. He never said a word. When he truly couldn't take it anymore, he'd curl up in the woodshed where he slept to sob quietly. Even there, he couldn't make too much noise. He was sure to be beaten again if he woke anyone up. Did you hate them very much? Asked Mu Yanli. Mo Run looked up, disdain in his eyes. Who wouldn't? But your surname was given to you by her. If you despised her, why didn't you change it? Mo was the adoptive name used in the House of Drunken Jade. Lots of servants sold to the house had that surname. We called Madame Mo Mother or Ma'am. Everyone did it. So I got used to it. No point in changing my surname. And did she treat all of you poorly? Mo Run hesitated. No, but she'd never liked me. And after I let Xun Feng Ro go, she couldn't stand the sight of me. How poorly did Madame Mo treat you? It was an easy question. In all the years Mo Run spent in the House of Drunken Jade, the only time he was allowed meat was on New Year's Eve, when he could gnaw on a half-eaten piece of gristle that a patron left behind. On any other day, he only ever had that single flatbread. He was always given the hardest work, and the slightest mistake earned him a whipping. But he didn't want to say all that. I'd rather not talk about it, he said simply. That's fine. Let's talk about something else. She treated you poorly. When she asked you where Monian was that day, did you lie? Had you already begun to scheme to take Monian's place? No, said Moran. Of course you wouldn't dare to. His shelter, food, and safety were all in the madam's hands. The young Moran had reacted to her question like a dog accustomed to being hit. Flinching, he whispered. Nyangongja went to his lessons. Madame Mo had no illusions about her son. She knew this was impossible. The boy hated studying. It was vastly more likely he'd gone off on a wild lark somewhere, but the investigator was right there, so she only cleared her throat and nodded. Oh, that child of mine is so mature. Look, sir, he's gone to school again. The man laughed. Ah, a studious child is a blessing. How about this? I'll write a letter to the sect leader of Sishun Peak and call him here. He'll meet the boy soon enough. There's no point in rushing things now. Madame Mo rose just to fall down to her knees in front of him, overwhelmed with emotion. Thank you, sir. Even in future prosperity, I will never forget what you've done for us. When the investigator had left, Madame Mo sat in a daze for a long time, lost in fanciful thoughts and old sorrows. Every so often she'd burst into laughter or tears. Hours passed before she noticed Mo-Run watching her fearfully from a corner. Perhaps it was because she saw her own shame in Duan Yihan's past, or the simple fact that Mo-Run had dared set her golden goose free. Regardless, Mo-Run's impression of her was correct. She disliked the boy, and her resentment had grown more intense over time. What are you looking at? She said, glaring at him. Mo-Run lowered his long lashes. Sorry. You say that, but I bet you think my laughing and crying is ridiculous, don't you? Mo-Run said nothing. His meek obedience made Madame Mo shoot him a glance and sneer. Forget it. I won't bother with you. What would you know, anyway, faithless, ungrateful cur? He was used to such epithets from her. Silent, he kept his head down. Don't just stand there. I'm in a good mood today. I won't beat you. Go find Nyangongja. Don't try to fool me. I know he's not at his lessons. Bring him home. I have something important to tell him. Hurry. At the mention of the young master, Mo-Run couldn't help flinching again. But still he nodded and mumbled. Yes, mother. Don't call me that anymore. Madame Mo wrinkled her nose. Soon I'll be out of the house of Drunken Jade. Forget it. I've said enough to you. Hurry and go. That evening, Mo-Run apprehensively set out to look for Nyangongja. He didn't know if he'd rather find the boy sooner or later. The young master was certain to yell at him for ruining his day just as soon as they crossed paths. But if he went back empty-handed, Madame Mo was sure to do the same over his incompetence. His slight silhouette wandered helplessly through the fading light. At that moment, Mo-Run had no idea he and Nyangongja would swap places. He looked hither and thither, just as he was told. He went to every one of Nyangongja's regular haunts, the riverside, the gambling hall, the brothel, the cockfighting rings, only to be chased from each with derision. Finally, after asking around, he learned that Nyangongja and his friends had gone to an old mill on the outskirts of the city with a large sack in tow. Mo-Run thought nothing of it before rushing off. The mill had been abandoned for years, and the only landmark nearby was a cemetery. Very rarely did anyone come here. Mo-Run jogged the whole way, but before he reached the building, he saw a group of half-clothed youths scrambling from it. Nyangongja was in the lead, still pulling up his pants. Gongja, mother wants you home, Mo-Run hastily cried. She says... His voice died in his throat. There were expressions of terror on the boys' faces. Some were in tears, shaking as they cowered at the side of the group. Mo-Run froze. Years of abuse had honed his instinct for danger. When he saw Nyangongja staring fixedly at him with red-rimmed eyes, Mo-Run's hair stood on end. He whirled around and ran. Nyangongja reacted quickly. Grab him, he shouted. How could Mo-Run be a match for them? The other boys had him pinned in moments and dragged him before Niangongja. "What do we do?" someone whispered. "Anyan, we're in big trouble. It's too late to run. This brat saw us. Why don't we..." Mo-Run had no idea what they were talking about, but the youthful faces around him were all dark with malice. This was his earliest impression of the word monster. Niangongja narrowed his eyes. He was the calmest and cruelest among them, and after some thought, he said, "Don't kill him." Mo-Run's head jerked up. Kill? They'd beaten him, cursed him, and abused him, but he never imagined he would hear the word kill from the mouths of a group of teenagers. His mind went blank. "Lock him up in the mill," Mo-Nyan said. The group exchanged glances. One boy with a pinched and narrow face was the first to catch on. Eyes shining, cheeks red, with snot still streaming from his nose, he exclaimed, "Yes, what a good idea." One by one, the others also saw his intent. "Oh, I get it. Hanyan, you're a genius." Moments ago, they had looked at Mo-Run as if he was their ultimate enemy. Now the eyes pinned on him were those of starving wolves eyeing a fatted lamb. The boys shoved Mo-Run into the mill. He pounded on the door with both fists, thrashing, but it was swiftly barricaded shut. There were no windows. The only light came in through the cracks between the wooden boards of the walls. "Let me out," he yelled. "Let me out." Someone outside cried, Report him right now." "Hurry up, we'll keep an eye on him. You guys go run and tell the officials." Mo-Run shouted and pounded on the door, but it was no use. He let his hands fall, turning around dizzily. In the thin bars of light, he saw the room's other inhabitants sprawled upon the ground. It was a girl with familiar features. Upon further thought, he realized she was the daughter of the tofu seller on Eastern Street, whom Niangongja had been pursuing for some time. Her clothes were torn away, leaving her body bare on the ground. Her limbs were askew, her skin mottled with purpling bruises, and between her legs, she'd been... Oh. She'd been raped to death by these beasts. The tears on her face had yet to dry, and her wide, sightless eyes stared blankly at the doorway where Mo-Run stood. It took Mo-Run a moment to understand. When he did, he screamed. His back hit the door with a thud, his pupils contracting as he finally grasped what they had done and what they were going to do. After being rebuffed, Niangongja had come up with a terrible plan for the girl. She was a soft target, weak-willed and from an unimportant family. He and his friends had tricked her and dragged her to the mill, where they had taken turns defiling her. The girl was frail to begin with, and the brutes were so rough with her that she died partway through their fun. "No," Mo-Run cried. He turned, crazed, slamming against the doors. Open the door! Open the door! It wasn't me! Open the door!" As if in answer to his prayers, the mill doors opened. Mo-Run tried to run, but the boys grabbed his wrists and pinned them. Once again, Niangongja led the group. "Nearly forgot," he said mercilessly. "You have to look the part." He directed the boys to rip off Mo-Run's clothes, then smeared blood and fluids from the girl's corpse over his skin. Mo-Run wept the whole time, thrashing with all his might, but they were too strong. Desperation to save their own skins took precedence over all else. They ignored Mo-Run's begging and sobbing, their eyes flashing like the eyes of beasts. One of the boys backhanded Mo-Run across the face after Mo-Run bit him. "Shut the fuck up," he spat. "You're a murderer, rapist, with so many witnesses. How could you possibly defend yourself?" "It wasn't me. It wasn't..." But what could he do? They roughed him up and threw him in the mill, locking him in with that dead girl's naked body before running off to falsely report the crime to the officials. There was nothing Mo-Run could say for himself. The court punished him with 30 strikes of the rod, leaving him bruised and bloodied, then locked him up to await sentencing. The other prisoners mocked and swore at him, and those with daughters held nothing back as they beat him. One of them was ready to defile him in retribution, and was only stopped because the head jailer wanted to minimize fuss. Madame Mo came to the prison that very night. Of course she knew what had really happened, and resented her son's base nature. But what use was resentment? A mother would always protect her child first and foremost. Her greatest fear was that the truth would come out during the hearing. If it came to light that Mo Nian was the real culprit, how would the two of them move up in the world? The investigator's letter had already gone out, and Xisheng Peak was sending people to bring them home. She'd waited for this so long her hair had gone gray at the temples. She and her son deserved that glory and status. Nothing would stand in her way. So it was that she rushed through the night and bribed both jailer and the county officials. Don't look too closely, she pleaded. Just make it all Mo Run's fault. But perhaps her conscience wouldn't let her rest, for she went to the prison afterward to see Mo Run. She even brought him a bowl of braised pork. It's not poisoned. I wouldn't poison you. Oh, there's art. It's pretty cold in North Carolina, finally, at the moment. It's pretty cold. So it's fairly cold in the house. I'm warm with the flames of rage. Mo Run watched her from the corner where he was curled, his eyes, so dark they looked purple, glimmering with helplessness and hurt. He looked like an animal lined up for slaughter, upset and fearful, yet docile with despair. Something quavered in Madame Mo. Terrified by her own reaction, she rose quickly to her feet. Hardening her heart and her voice, she said, "You're an orphan, after all. It's sad, but no one will mourn your death. I've kept you alive for so many years. It's high time you repaid the favor." Mo Run looked silently back at her. Madame Mo gritted her teeth. "Consider this bowl of pork your compensation. Once you eat it, don't blame me in the underworld. I didn't have a choice either." She brings back phrases like a leitmotif of fucking razor blades to the soul. With a flare of her skirts, she was gone. Mo Run had never eaten braised pork. Now that a whole bowl sat before him, he stared at it, but did not touch any of its contents. He knocked it over, watching as the red sauce spilled into the dirt of the cell. The sight reminded him of the blood that had pooled beneath the girl's body, filling him with a revulsion so sharp he turned and heaved, clutching the wall for support. There was nothing for him to throw up. Mo Run was fed a flatbread a day, and his last meal had long since been digested. He brought up only bile. That night he couldn't sleep. The blood smeared over his skin had hardened into a shell that flaked into rusty powder at the slightest touch, sloughing off onto the ground. He sat in silence. No one knew what he was thinking. No one knew if he was even alive. Huddled in on himself, he slowly came to realize many truths. In that dark and filthy prison, in that cell reeking of bile and braised pork, the obedient Mo Run died. born in his place was Emperor Taishanjin, feared throughout the realm by commoners and cultivators alike. Emperor Taishanjin at his inception. This was the root of the all-consuming hatred brought to life by the flower of eightfold sorrows. That is the end of the chapter. Next time, we'll be on page 223 for chapter 262, which is called Curtain Call. And I saw Liv's comment, and I am aggressively ignoring it. Sure. Yeah. That tracks, actually, thoroughly. Because usually, most of the time, I think like an extreme majority, actually, most of the time, murderers, what you would call psychopaths, sadists, serial killers, most of the time, they're not actually born. They're made. And they're made by upbringings like that. So this is very much psychologically sound. If you look into the childhoods of many, many serial killers, it's all very sadly familiar. Yep. Ninin asked me, how do you feel about not inviting Mike today? I really do need to go visit Mike, actually, now that you say that. I really, really do. Can I swing it by Thursday? I'm not entirely sure, but listen, ever since I started on medication for ADHD, lists became feasible. It's like the number one piece of advice for people with ADHD is make lists, to-do lists, and just lists. Lists save my life, etc., etc. I never had that capacity when I was unmedicated. The idea of making lists really overwhelmed me. But now that I'm medicated, I'm like, oh my God, lists. They're like the greatest thing. So visit Mike is now on my to-do list. I don't even have a place to put this fucking book. All right. So, that's it for Erha, Volume 8 today. We're not even done. Not really. How the fuck? Now that we have this information, it's like, how did you? Like the details anyway of how did you get out of here, kill Monyan, and then bribe the investigator somehow? Although actually, I guess my batshit theory might still hold. He could get out, kill Monyan, and then, I don't know, force Madame Mo to pay off the investigator? Or Madame Mo finds out and is like, oh shit, take this kid? But it's probably more like he forced Madame Mo to pay off the investigator, or just killed Madame Mo and stole a bunch of her money. Who knows? If we're talking about the birth of Taishanjun, who can say? But we're not even done yet with this I don't want to call it an info dump, but you know, this mini arc of exposition. And that sounds cruel because the word exposition gets a bad rap, but like exposition is necessary. It's not like some evil thing of you're never supposed to drop exposition. This is a lie. Exposition, you can't write a book without it. This is like a mini arc of exposition. And it's not done yet. It's not done. Has that sunk in? It's not done. I don't know how close we are, because who the fuck knows? But it's not done. It's not. I'm gonna go. I have no more brain cells. Absolutely fucking none. So I am going to breathe deeply and unclench my shoulders and go. I will be here in a couple of days for the book chat on Thursday at 2:15 with YouTube members and patrons to talk about what we read today. And then at 3 p.m., it will be another reading stream. Because I stream Tuesdays and Thursdays where we read gay shit. So, I'm going to go. Please have a lovely week. And above all, take care of yourself. Okay? I'll see you Thursday.